I hiked I hiked Mount Kilimanjaro with less than 7 days notice. And while it was a really cool opportunity for me to hike this incredibly beautiful mountain, the story doesn't exactly have a happy ending for me. As some of you know, I'm a filmmaker and photographer, and I got offered a last-minute chance to go to Kilimanjaro, but I had less than a week to prepare for this hike, and I probably should have said no. To put things into context, this is a hike that people prepare for months, and sometimes even years. I am not a very active person, so hiking Mount Kilimanjaro was a really big deal. This is my Kilimanjaro story. So when we started off the hike, I was genuinely scared for my life and super nervous for what was to come. We are hiking up Kilimanjaro. It is day one of the hike. So far we've done about 4 miles. We should almost be to our first base camp. As you can see, it's like straight up forest. Getting to the first hut was actually super easy and beautiful.
We couldn't decide. We're like,
The area was full of life. We even came across some monkeys along the way.
Hello.
hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Mambo.
Hoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jambo bwana, habari gani? Mzuri sana. Wageni wakaribishwa Kilimanjaro, hakuna matata. Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro is roughly 20,000 feet high. For those of you wondering how high that is, the average skydive is at 13,000 feet. So we are above where people skydive, and on some parts of the hike, we are even above the clouds. After sleeping the night in our huts, we moved on to day 2 of hiking. It is day 2, we just barely started. From what I'm told, day 1 is actually fairly easy, and I'd have to agree, a lot easier than what I was expecting. I think we went about 7.4 miles yesterday. Today, I want to say closer to 10 miles. We were around 10,000 feet of elevation, and I noticed that I was having a hard time breathing. I find myself taking really deep breaths while exerting very little effort.
Same thing.
I was taking breaks, drinking water. I'm walking at a completely normal pace on relatively flat ground, but I'm breathing very heavily. But on the positive side, I did get to see some wild chameleons, and they were probably the cutest animals I've ever seen. As we continued the hike, the landscape changed again. We were walking in clouds. After the long day of hiking, we finally got to our huts and enjoyed one of the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen. Day 3 of hiking, nothing crazy. It was mostly just desert and dust. We arrived at the Kibo hut, and it was super frustrating. So here's the thing. That particular day of hiking, we have to leave for summit at midnight. So we get to our huts, and what happened was other hikers that weren't part of our group had come down and walked into our rooms and were sleeping there. And since there wasn't a ton of organization or authority really in that area, they weren't getting kicked out and they just slammed the door in our faces. So we just had to sit in the dirt and wait for people who shouldn't have been there in the first place. Only hours later are we going to do summit day. Okay, so we finally get in there. After dinner and the briefing and all the things, it's about 9 p.m. now. So we only have 3 hours to try and sleep before we have to go and summit. So obviously none of us sleep because we're super stressed, there's not enough time, and the porters kept running in and out. So here we are, we're just exhausted and tired, but we're getting ourselves ready to go. We all line up, single file, it's pitch black, we have our hiking poles in hand, and we start the long 6 hours up to the top. And that was the last video clip I was able to record. In 6 hours, we do 4,000 to 5,000 feet of elevation. And this is where things started to go bad for me. I kept falling asleep while I was walking, and I'd find myself bumping into the person in front of me. I think it was a combination of how late it was, but honestly, probably because of the lack of air that was going to my brain. Around halfway up, I remember I was sitting down on the ground, and when it was time to get up and go again, I just couldn't. One of the porters took my day pack and carried my bag for me, and I never touched my bag again until we got back down to the hut, because he carried it for me the entire time. And around 70% of the way up, I am about ready to give up entirely. I am completely fatigued. I have almost no strength left. It's insanely hard to breathe, and I am gulping for air, and it just felt like it was not there. So what's crazy about this hike is that it has nothing to do with your actual strength, and it has everything to do with your endurance and stamina. So like if this was my stamina, it just like plowed through all of that and then started using the essence of my soul instead. I just felt like years of my life were being shaved off with every step that I took. With no second guessing at all, I can confidently say this was the hardest physical thing I've ever done in my entire life. Then one of the porters comes up and he says, "Hey, look, that right there, that is the top." When he said that to me, I thought he meant, hey, you're 95% of the way up and you only have this much more to go. But I was actually like, down further. So I kept going thinking that we were so close. Around 90% of the way up, I have no more strength. I can't keep going. I keep falling asleep every time we take a break, and it takes a ton of energy just to stand up again. My porter literally grabs my arm and is dragging my body to the top. And the only thing I have strength for is to make sure that my feet hit the ground every time we move forward. So we get to Gilman's Point, and I'm just ecstatic. We made it. It's wonderful. It's great. And I'm so tired. I'm basically delirious. I barely know what's going on, but I was just happy that I got there. But then people are like, all right, let's keep going to the top. And I'm like, huh? Come again? Turns out that there are multiple tops for Kilimanjaro, and we still had another 0.8 miles to go to get to Uhuru Peak, which is the highest point of the mountain. And I'm just about dead, so I just tell everyone, you guys go, I'm waiting here. I can't do that. After a couple more minutes of waiting, a hiker from our group had come back, found me, and he was like, you are so close. You're never gonna be here again. You've never been closer. Just keep pushing and you can get there. And then I said, okay. And I definitely should have said no. It was freezing. It was so cold. There's snow everywhere. And I was wearing thermal top, light hoodie, heavy hoodie, down jacket, shell, underwear, thermals, sweats, snow pants, and thick socks, and it was still super cold. So we keep going. I kind of look like a rag doll, just like tumbling in somewhat of a forward direction. So as I keep going, I see one of our group members taking a break to put crampons on her shoes. I collapse next to her. After a break, she had left. So Moody tells me, hey, it's time to keep going. Up there, around that rock, that's how much further you need to go. But I could not. I kept falling asleep. I couldn't even stand up again. I had no more energy. And I just kept having to tell him, I am sorry, I cannot go any further. And unfortunately, that was the highest I ever got. If we zoom into some of the photos that we got, you can actually see people in the distance. Had I gotten to where they were, I probably would have seen the sign from that spot. But he was just so sad that I couldn't make it to the peak. So the two of us go back to Gilliman's Point, and then I ask him, can we go back down now? And he said, no, we have to wait for the group. So I'm like, okay, you know, I'll wait. And he sees that I'm in super bad shape. So he's like, okay, let's go down. And it takes 3 hours to get back down. So I have this photo from the top, and that tiny, tiny, tiny little dot is the camp. And you know, you might be thinking, oh, well, it's easier because it's downhill. No, that is not true. It takes a lot more energy for your body to stop the momentum that you have from going down. So going down felt so much more tiring. After the most exhausting hours of trying to get down, we finally get to the hut. I go straight to my sleeping bag and knock out. And Trevor, who is the other filmmaker, he walks in and he sees me shaking uncontrollably. So when he walks in, that wakes me up, basically convulsing. So while I'm shaking, I say, please get help right now. So he runs off and a bunch of people come in and they're like, this is probably due to the altitude. We need to get you down right now. So they put me into a stretcher and take me down to the next hut. And my head just hurt so bad. I don't normally get headaches or migraines, but this was so painful. And the path is super bumpy. And so every time they hit a bump, it would smack my head into the stretcher. I genuinely think I got a concussion from going down. Hopefully not, because I definitely was sleeping during that. So we finally make it down to the day 2 camp, and I probably sleep for 14 to 16 hours or something. I didn't eat a thing that entire time. I only had my water with me. I couldn't hold any food down. And it got to the point where I needed to be ambulanced down from that point. So another one of the hikers got super sick with almost exactly what I had. So he came into my hut as well. And then the two of us both got ambulanced down to the gate. And we are just both feeling horrible. And the second we got out of the car, he throws his bag on the ground next to me and he throws up. And we were both just in super bad shape. So we asked if we could be driven back to the hotel, and they said, no, you actually have to wait for 7 hours for the rest of your group to walk back down. So then we were like, no. So we just paid our own driver to take us to the hotel. And then I slept, and I got so sick for a couple more days. I couldn't eat anything, and when I did, I couldn't hold it down. I felt horrible and nauseous all the time. I lost a super unhealthy amount of weight and I was in super bad shape. But after all of that, the only thing that stayed was this little mark on my nose. Anyway, and it happened when I was getting stretchered down. All of my body was covered except for my face, which was just pointed straight up at the sun. So I don't normally sunburn. I know, hard life. But we're a lot closer to the equator, the elevation doesn't help, and I'm pretty sure the pills we were on make you more sensitive to the sun. So a combination of all those things left a really nasty burn on my nose, and it's mostly healed up from what I can tell. But yeah, it was a crazy experience. It was kind of like the bucket list item that I never wanted, in that it's something that I would never want to happen, but it's something that I definitely don't regret happening. So yeah, that's my crazy story of hopefully not almost dying on Kilimanjaro. The more and more I think about what happened, the more I realize that humans are crazy. Human beings should not be up there. But really, I'm just grateful that I'm okay. I think things could have been way worse for me, honestly. So I thought me being sick was just because I didn't have enough time to prepare, but there were a lot of people who spent months and months training, and you know, these are like mountain men type of people who got just as sick, and some were even coughing up blood. But it's just crazy the effects of altitude sickness. This sounds dumb, but not having air is just such a scary feeling. Sorry, I'm not telling you guys not to go hike Mount Kilimanjaro, but I am saying know what you're getting into, because human beings are not meant to be that high. So I got this little certificate, and I technically didn't make it to the top, but I'm proud of this. But yeah, that is my crazy story of how I almost summited Mount Kilimanjaro with less than 7 days of notice. But I'm just super grateful that I made it out okay and that no serious injuries came upon anybody. That's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, comment below if you would hike Kilimanjaro. Do not forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.